Good morning, good morning, good morning for the second time today. Aren't you lucky? This is me, Ryan, waiting for Helen for our weekly political blast. And I'm assuming, I'm guessing, it's going to mainly be on the UK budget, which we had yesterday. There she is. Yes, there's her. One sec, one sec, one sec. Bum, bum, bum. Oh, I better tell people it's live. I can do that whilst Helen is joining. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm all right. It feels like it's funny you said good morning. It feels like it should be lunchtime already.
Well, I had a shocker this morning earlier on when I was introducing Michael Brown on the morning blast because I was convinced it was Tuesday. So that was I had no idea what's happened there.
That's
Um,
that's even worse.
I
Go
know, I
backwards
know,
in
right?
time. We don't
I
need
was
to
like,
repeat the last 2 days, do we?
well, no, please
Woo.
don't. I'll tell you what, before we get into it, though, let me give the
Yes.
old disclaimer. Nothing discussed on this space session constitutes trading or investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by PIQ Global Limited, Traders PIQ, or PIQ Suite, or its affiliates, including the hosts, which is, of course, Miss Helen Thomas from Blonde Money and myself, Master Ryan Paisley from PIQ. And before we go any further, I must add that I just spoke to Dickie Matthews this morning and he sends his love.
Oh, that's very nice. Hello, Dickie.
Yeah.
Is he swimming
Oh,
in the sea again?
he probably is at some point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. This is what he does. This is what he
Yep.
does.
Yep.
But anyway, so where do we start?
Where do we start?
Nervous laughter.
Well, I think we should start. You know what we should start with, because you've probably got this more up to date than I have, is where are gilt yields? Because that's
Well,
all
I
that
actually have.
anyone is asking.
Actually haven't got them in front of me. So if anyone's listening and
Fine.
wants to provide them,
Well,
I can get them.
the last time I had a quick look about 10 minutes ago, I think they were on the highs of the day in the 10 year. Anyway, they were higher. And obviously, the market reaction of the last, well, not even 24 hours, is it, since the
No.
budget? Not even, but has been for higher UK yields, which is entirely rational given the increased amount of borrowing. I mean, that's the main market takeaway
Yeah.
from this is there is a lot more borrowing and a lot more in the front of the forecast. So what Rachel Reeves delivered yesterday was, um, yes, a lot more borrowing, but doing more of it in the next couple of years. She's so well, I'm still trying to digest it myself, actually, because here's what I would say about that budget was both extremely big and extremely small. In the sense
Christ.
that there's some really big numbers, and it was a surprise, I think, really in extra borrowing, but then and big, sorry, and big tax rises, but then what is she doing with it? Because
That's the concern, right?
the OBR itself says in 5 years' time, real GDP will be 1.5% and basically unchanged from where we are
Yeah.
now. So it's like throwing all of that around to get where? To do what?
Like, yeah, exactly, right. It's like, okay, yeah, okay, you're singing from the rafters about how, this is a budget for growth and all stuff like that. But when you break it down, it's like, well, is it? um, yeah,
So it's just kind of odd in that way. So I suppose it's uh well, God, right, where do we get to? Do you know what we should start with, Ryan? Is
gone.
let's start with the farmers, because you love it. You're
Oh,
all over
don't.
that.
Yeah, well, I feel really bad for them.
Yeah.
I have been known to put culture in agriculture. Let's be honest. I'm from a very rural background. But yeah, no, as I was saying to Michael, so I'll quickly repeat it for those that don't really grasp the gravity of this. Obviously, imagine you're a farmer, and say you got, I don't know, 500 acres or whatever, and you're lucky enough to have children that actually want the farm when you pass on, which
Mm,
is a rarity these days.
it is.
God, because it's getting harder for them to actually have a career doing that. But then when you unfortunately die, and as I said this morning, it's an incredibly dangerous occupation. Um, and when you come to pass it on, unfortunately, the way the tax is calculated is on the land value. Now, if you've got hundreds, if not thousands of acres, your inheritance bill could be millions plus. Um, but you're only making on that farm incredibly small margins and sometimes no profit at all. Depends on, like, if you've had a bad year or whatever. So you could be having you potentially you could have a farm that, say, has 1,000 acres, and you might only be making it's like 75 grand a year profit, but then all of a sudden you're being hit with a massive multi-million pound tax bill. Now you cannot afford to pay that. So what happens is you're going to have to sell the land, and without putting the old tinfoil fedora on or whatever, but it will be big corporations like your BlackRocks and stuff like that that buys it all up. And as someone else pointed out this morning, that it's basically now only becomes profitable if you're going to stick solar panels on it. So I think this is I think this is a huge, huge misstep by Labour doing this, because already we're seeing a lot of people that kind of are normally quite quiet on this kind of stuff, get
Mm.
very, very vocal. I was kind of quite pleased to see. Oh yeah, I'm not Jeremy Clarkson's biggest fan, but I think he does make some very salient points occasionally, and I think he's bang on the money here with what he's saying already this yesterday, and as I mentioned, pardon me, in a tweet this morning, I would love to see him get political here and really kind of rally the country against not just the Labour Party, but in particular this budget. And I believe if he did that, I personally believe he could create quite a huge movement here. And in a very kind of comedial British way, it would almost be like our version of Musk rallying behind Trump, because he has got that same cult like personality in the
Yeah, and
UK.
he can say whatever he likes it to a degree, to a
Yeah,
degree, like, can't
exactly.
he, as well?
Yeah, like
So yeah.
I've famously been doxxed in the Daily Mail because I took the piss out of Clarkson many moons ago. Well, that's more for a beer. Yeah, don't Google my name, please do not Google my name. But yes, yeah. So we don't always see eye to eye, but I believe that he's bang on the money, and I would love to see him take the proverbial bull by the horn. See what I did there, little
Well,
agricultural
yeah, that's
reference.
a joke. Yeah. Well, look,
Um,
look at that. You wrapped that up nicely, and um, and it may well unravel, and it may change. And this is the thing: just because it was announced yesterday doesn't mean it will eventually be
well,
enacted
so
exactly as is.
that's what I was. Funny enough, I'm glad you said that, because that was a key question I had, because I couldn't remember if when she said it like this, is that now like written into a law, or is this something that's just like this is provisional?
Yeah, no, no. Well, it will be moved forward in law. Some of the enactments that took place at midnight last night, do immediately happen. Um, but there is a finance bill and a budget bill, and it does all. And of course, they've got a massive majority. So you might argue, yeah, but that's just sort of technical. But it isn't, because there is time before those legislative
Right.
moves to happen. But I'll take people back to 2012, if those who remember what was then known as the Omnishambles budget under my former boss, although I wasn't working with him then, but that was George Osborne, and he had the famous pasty tax, as it was branded, which was a really technical shift to VAT, which people got very upset that it hit Greg's pasties, and then they said, "Oh well, we're not going to do it. We're not going to do it." So, so it can change. It can change.
There is hope. There is hope.
But that you but you've but
Yeah.
this beginning of this discussion is where this budget was kind of interesting, because you every decision you make, you might be taking from one group and giving to another. You're making choices. So you
Yeah.
might decide, I don't care about the farmers, whatever. You might decide that. Um, you might say they might only shift voters this much. You might say, I've just got him with a massive majority, I don't care for 5 years. Um, Although I would add that the farmers certainly in Europe have created quite a lot of political headaches, from barricading roads in France, and all sorts of things that go on. So it's a community that has um, uh, spirit behind it, and as you say, people can fall in, sort of rally round a cause, even if they are not themselves a farmer. So you have to be a bit careful with these interest groups, and this is what you do with a budget is if you have to tally up the numbers and you've decided you are going to have to hurt certain groups, then you've got to take that as like a political calculation. So it's like an economic calculation of making my numbers add up. And then there's the political calculation. What's slightly bizarre is that going into this, Rachel Reeves was saying, well, she ran an election campaign on private equity are going to get hit, non-doms, uh, VAT on private schools, windfall tax on oil and energy, and something else, and that's how I'm going to raise the money. And then what she's ended up doing is not a lot of those things, or rather,
Yeah.
not fully. So actually, the private equity bit, and I had to read the full OBR report yesterday, so forgive me on going into the weeds, but private equity carried interest changes, which there are there's an immediate one, and there's going to be consultation or discussion on more later, or redrawing of the law. But the upshot in the OBR is it will raise, by the fifth year of the forecast, it will raise point 0.1,
Oh,
as
yeah,
in
right.
£100 million, like nothing, basically,
A
right? Like
rounding
nothing.
error. It's a rounding error.
It's not, yeah, it's barely even that. So, so she had these like five things she was desperately going to do that were going to raise the money. Then she sort of done them a bit, but not really. Even the non-doms they think will be about 5 billion. Again, that's not even that much. So she had to come up with this big one, which was the national insurance on employers. But even that, so there's this talk of it. The headline is it's going to raise 25 billion. That is the lion's share of the tax rises. Tax rises
Yeah.
come to about 35 billion, of which that's supposed to be, it looks like it's 25 billion. But then she's said that it's not going to apply to all the public sector, so that reduces it. And the OBR have said, well, there's a behavioural impact where there might be fewer people employed. I think the OBR say 50,000 fewer jobs. When you add all of that up, then you only get 10 billion out of that.
Yeah.
So, so she's kind of doing this thing where she's like announcing something, and then chopping it down and trying to figure out, like, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And even that national insurance thing, it's like, well, if I'm going to lower the threshold, so you start paying it sooner on someone's wages, but I'm going to overall for a whole company raise the threshold. So if you're a tiny business with like two or
Yeah.
three people, you're not going to have to pay it, because she's trying desperately to carve out these groups of like, well, I don't want to upset like
Yeah. Right. Exactly. It's
three plumbers, but
but
I
the,
am going to hit Marks and Spencers.
but this is it. And when you try and yeah, what's that phrase? Every added page of stuff like this, or every added kind of
Yes.
paragraph to kind of this adds more loopholes, right? So it just becomes
Well,
incredibly, yeah, incredibly damaging. And there's only one winner here, and it's going to be like trust planners. Do you know what I mean?
but this is, but it belies a budget that, what is its point? Now, often, because normally you have like a guiding principle. So that thing actually, you have a guiding principle, and then you might have some loose ends you have to tie up. So that 2012 pasty tax came about because George Osborne wanted to remove the top rate of income tax. So Gordon Brown introduced a higher 50 pence rate, which George Osborne then got rid of. So I don't know if you'll remember that, but Gordon Brown introduced a higher rate in the wake of the financial crisis, arguing, look, the richest have to pay more, although actually it didn't raise that much in tax. But anyway, George doesn't want to get rid of it, but it was in coalition with the Liberal Democrats. So they said, fine, but we want you to raise at the bottom end the personal allowance, so take more people out of tax. And then they were like, great, well, we'll do all that. Oh, hang on, we doesn't add up now, so we'll think of something else. Okay, VAT on rotisserie chickens in supermarkets. That's what it was, and it ended up blowing up this
Proper
huge.
tax.
Yeah, and then it ended up, because it's hot foods. That's when it hit a pasty. So it's. I'm telling everyone this, so they understand like how the political calculations are made. The thing is, it can unravel on, like you've just gone in there and impassioned plea about farming. It can have it can cast a very long shadow, and then if it does change, your numbers really won't add up again. So
Yeah.
uh, actually, the thing I would drive at here, the two big sort of numbers out of all of this are the amount of fiscal headroom the OBR calculate that is out of this budget, is planned and forecast, is the same as Jeremy Hunt had in March. So like it's about 11 billion pounds,
Yeah.
i.e., second important point, if interest rates move, inflation moves, growth isn't delivered, that'll disappear in a heartbeat.
Yeah. Yep.
So
Yep. Yep.
it's a she's actually made a big, this is why I say it's both big and small. It's like she's actually done like a huge gamble, actually. She's borrowed a lot up front, left the economy far more sensitive to moves in interest rates and inflation, uh, and punted it into trying to get growth by spending on hospitals and schools in the first 2 years. And is that going to work? Jury's
Well,
out.
this problem as well, like we said, it's how much do you trust that they're going to spend it wisely and efficiently? And quite honestly, not just because it's Labour, but governments in general,
Yeah.
I don't trust that at all. So like you said, they've made a hell of a lot of noise and upset a lot of carts, um,
Mm.
and it doesn't feel like it's for very much.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe we will all be wrong, and it will turn out that the public sector is genius at investing, and
Yeah.
she said something in her speech like, I think it was, successful businesses depend on successful schools, healthy businesses depend on a healthy health service. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but she was trying to obviously do this link
Yeah.
between, like, you get the public sector right and then business works. And she said,
Yeah.
um, something like stable finances. Which way round was it? Stable finances deliver a stable economy.
Oh, yeah, I do remember hearing something like that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Strong finances. Oh, I'm getting my sorry, my strong public finances. Yes, strong economy is dependent on strong public
Right.
finances.
Got
But
you.
actually, you'd think it's the other way round. That strong public finances are dependent on a strong economy. It's like what each way round, what drives what, and
It's
actually, it
very,
sounds
very much chicken and egg.
it's important. Yeah, well, yeah, it's important though because it's if if it if you look at it the other way around, if you go with egg rather than chicken or chicken rather than egg, you lead to quite different outcomes.
Yeah.
As in your
Yeah, yeah.
outlook on that, you might decide, oh, yeah, more healthcare for chickens, or you might decide, better nests for eggs. As in,
Yeah, yeah. Right, right.
it does, if you put all of it onto one rather than the other, then you are going to get a very different outcome. We are going to, I mean, we're going to see in real time now if the public sector can be productive. Oh, and
Good luck
here's
with
the
that.
big yeah. Well, here's the bigger problem to all of this. Here, and I was thinking about this yesterday in terms of obviously everyone's looking at guilt yields, and is she coping with that? And to be quite honest, I could see gilt yields going up a bit more. There's more borrowing. Also, we're going to come on to this, but big event next week, the U.S. election, and
Yes.
that is going to lead to bigger potentially inflation and higher interest rates and more borrowing from the US. So that'll have its ramifications. But going, coming back briefly then to the UK is um I've lost my thread, Ryan, because there's just so many things
Oh,
flying around in my head. It's about it's about the credibility of it all. It's fine to have higher interest rates to pay for things, but the Trust tried one way, Reeves is trying the other. But the thing that ties them together is this is where I was coming to.
ah,
Neither of them had a mandate, and that is the political problem. By which I mean, Truss was not elected by the people, just by the Conservative Party. So when she tried to do something, everyone was like, "Whoa, hang on a minute, what's this? We need to talk about this." When you look at what the Labour Party have just done, they said no tax rises on working people. Well, hang on a minute, because you've
yes.
just put a tax on jobs, which is working people. So if if the Labour Party had been more honest and still won a big majority, it would have been
Yeah, that.
fine.
Yeah,
But they
exactly. But
weren't.
they haven't. Yeah, exactly that. So that's a great point because someone actually, I saw someone make a little comment yesterday, and they were like, "Based from what this budget has delivered, unless you were a lawyer, you can't really argue that they've broken promises. Literally, literally, you have to go right into
Yeah,
the minutiae of the wordings to kind of argue that they haven't broken promises. But into every other person, they would look at the manifesto pledges and they'd say, "Well, hang on, you've broken this promise, you've broken that promise."
yeah. Well, and it's odd, isn't it? Really. I mean, so I saw the chief of staff to George Osborne, Rupert Harrison, was on Sky News yesterday talking about the 2009-2010 election campaign, where the Tories had said going into that election, we're going to have to do austerity. We've got to get the house back in order. We've got
Yeah,
massive debts on the books. All the banks went bust. And it probably cost them. That meant they had to go into coalition. They didn't win as many
yeah,
seats. But when they got in, then they could enact it because they'd said for a
yeah,
year, this is what we're going
yeah,
to
yeah.
do.
We knew it was coming, right?
So, yeah, this is I think why this feels this is it's a difficult budget in that way. And
And let's
it's
be honest, they weren't carrying a lot of kind of like love in the first
well, you're
first place
right.
due
That's the
due to
fact.
like
It's
the pensioners
yeah,
and all stuff like that. And yeah, um,
exactly. That was my going
just
to be my point.
just
Yeah.
one thing. So I just saw Tom, a good friend of mine, Tom Wiseman, who's just messaged in replied to the the Spaces post on this.
Oh.
He's asking about some laws that came in at the start of the day before the budget. I'm not sure what he's on about. He said a friend of
Hmm.
his has had problems because of mergers and acquisitions on this front. I'm not entirely sure what laws he
Before the
means.
budget, I don't know. I mean, I'd have to check. It would be extremely unusual to like
Yeah.
have something come in before she stood up in front of Parliament and said it. I don't
So there
know.
you go,
Maybe you need to
Tom.
be
We
more
don't know.
specific. I'll tell you. Oh, yeah, we don't know about that. I do. I mean, the one thing that did surprise me, if you're talking about speed of inaction, is that she announced a surcharge increase to people who buy second homes on stamp
Ah,
duty.
yes.
And that was a surprise. And she said, and it's effective tomorrow, i.e., today, meaning if you are buying a property
Oh,
as a
yeah.
second home. Now, George Osborne actually introduced this that you started having to pay a surcharge. So for a second, there's stamp duty rates. If you buy a as a second home, you've got extra 3 percentage points on top. Now you're going to have another two on top of that, so another five. So at the top end now, above 1.5 million quid, it means stamp duty is 17%, 17, A-
Ish.
and yeah, and because it is enacted like that, you can just imagine if you. I mean, this is maybe only a very small group of people, but if you were buying a home that was worth more than 1.5 million quid, and you know, um, if you'd completed the deal yesterday but exchanged contracts today, or exchanged yesterday and completed today, sorry, get the right way around, you're suddenly going to get hit by, what's that, 2% on 1.5 million. I mean, it's a decent extra amount of cash you're going to have to find
Yeah, well, this is it,
suddenly.
right?
So, there are things that came into this budget which did have immediate ramifications.
I see. So he just actually posted about these laws. So one of them is
Oh,
the
yeah.
capital gains tax rates. It came into effect made on or after the 30th of October. So they actually came into effect on the day for the whole of the
Ooh.
day. Yeah, it all seems to be capital gains related. Oh, and carried interest taxation
Good
reform as
spot
well.
by your good spot
Yeah,
by
good
your
spot by
man.
Tom.
That is
Yeah.
very nice. Yeah, on
So
or after the 30th.
yeah, so there's your wording for you again. It's proper one for
Ooh.
the lawyers to say, well, actually, look, this is what they've said, and this is what they mean.
Wow, that's gonna
That's
piss
a bit
people
naughty,
off.
isn't it? Yeah.
It's
Well, I
gonna
think
piss
it
people
sounds like
off.
it. It sounds like it already has done for
Well,
Tom's
yeah.
mate. I'll be honest.
But this is also where well, I mean, no hearts are going to bleed for that, for the man on the street. But they did say they wanted to be pro-business. You start doing stuff like this
That is
and
not pro-business.
affecting M&A deals, that filters down. And at a minimum, people say, well, it's a bit cheeky,
Yeah, very
like,
much so.
and then some people go, they're going to be downright pissed off. And I think, I think they're going to find it very hard to maintain a sort of a pro-business stance
Yeah,
on the basis of what they've come up with in this budget. It's not to say that
definitely.
businesses are always right, by the way. The way that a business person would run an economy can be very different to how a very good politician would run an economy. Doesn't mean that you get better results. But if you're going to expand borrowing like that and you want investment, then you are going to need business.
Well, yeah, unfortunately, I bet sometimes it feels like they don't really understand that part of the equation. But
No.
I don't know. Should we move away
Yes.
from the UK? Because I'm starting to get depressed now.
Yeah. Sorry, everyone. Well, there'll be loads of trading opportunities. I mean,
Well,
that's
hopefully.
and there'll come a point where stuff looks like a real bargain because it's depressed compared to the rest of the world. Anyway, go on. Yeah, tell us what else. Oh,
Uh,
US.
yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. But something's coming up. Something quite major's happening
It's a
there soon, isn't it?
small matter. It's a small matter. The return of Donald Trump, which we did further analysis on our um, election model, and yeah, it's far more likely to be Trump than Harris, is what that showed us. Basically, we can go through this in more detail if we do an actual preview on the day. But
I think we do. Yeah.
basically, the three Rust Belt swing states, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, Kamala Harris needs to win them all. Trump only needs to win one. That's simply to do with the electoral college votes and the fact he's got a slight advantage in um, some states that are easier for him to win than her. But where that is, so that to me, that's sort of like advantage Trump, if you like. So sort of
Yeah.
like advantage Trump in the maths. Then there's advantage Trump because the polls show him ahead in at least one of those three Rust Belt states. Then there's advantage Trump, where you might say, I don't believe the polls, they're rubbish, they will get it wrong. Okay, well, what about the broad direction of the polls? That has clearly been moving
Yeah,
towards Trump.
momentum. As you keep saying, it's
Yeah,
more about
momentum.
momentum. All
And
about momentum.
then, and then
There's one thing
advantage.
I've learned from you: it's momentum,
Yes,
momentum,
I know
momentum.
momentum. I know, I know, I know. And then the final element, part of the puzzle, is the way the campaigns are acting. So the Harris campaign in the last 10 days, maybe 2 weeks, has shifted quite aggressively to, oh my God, don't let him in. He's a fascist. He's a
Yeah,
racist. He's all that. And again, what that means is both campaigns are talking about the same person,
yeah,
and that means you give all the oxygen to that side. So you're it's a defensive strategy. It's shoring up your base vote. It's saying, oh my God, this isn't going well for us. We better make sure, like, we squeeze everyone who hates him as much as possible. That's the main way that Democrats seem to want to motivate people, is to say it's very close. Don't let that lunatic get in again.
yeah. Which when you're clutching at that straw, pretty means you have
Yes,
nothing better to talk about, which is not a
correct.
great sign.
No. And Frank Luntz, who is very interesting in these matters, who is a pollster, who, yeah, he's Republican originally, always, well, everyone talks to him. He's no fan of Trump, and he's a good one to follow. He's been saying that Kamala needed in the last week or so to go back to, what can I do? What's my change? What am I going to do for you? What am I all about? And the fact she's not doing that, is, he's saying, from a pure political strategy point of view, not the sensible path
No,
to actually winning votes. So what I would say for these last few days is, everything you're going to read and see on Twitter, X, all these other places, is all manipulation of trying to get a vote to turn out, which is
right.
why you actually can't really trust either side. So you'll see voter registrations, no, sorry, registered voters are through the roof for Republicans. Yay. Early voting's huge. Yay. Women are voting early in massive numbers. That's great for the Democrats. Yay. Like,
All
none
basically,
of it.
also all to kind of
All
like
it,
trigger the other side to come out as well, kind of thing.
yeah, it's, I mean, it's sensible stuff. They've got to, everyone's got to get out their marginal voter.
Yeah,
Um, and they're just trying to encourage people to vote, but it doesn't, don't draw any conclusion from early voting, particularly compared. So here's the other thing: anyone who says, "Oh, compared to last time round, this is happening," last time round, remember where we were? It was the winter of 2020, COVID, like,
oh yeah. I forgot about that.
huge changes in the way people were voting. People were obviously, a lot of them were really pissed off about that. In America, there were a lot of
Yeah,
people who were pissed off about the lockdowns that had happened or the ones that hadn't happened, and blah blah blah. So, like, a lot of this stuff about, like, oh, and also it changed habits. There's a lot more people voting early. That's true this time round than sort of historically been the case. But that's kind of because, oh, last time around they realised, oh, I could do that. I could register for an early ballot, get it done, out the way, move on. It doesn't necessarily mean, oh, they're definitely voting Democrat or they're definitely voting Republican. They're just
yeah,
voting. And it might only simply be like, oh, well, now we work from home. It's just a change in behaviour where people
no,
have thought,
absolutely.
so, so I just, it's going to be. I would be almost tempted to cut the only. I'm trying to think. I was going to say switch everything off. I mean,
I wish.
the only thing I know. I was trying to think. The only piece of useful information, if you're going to watch anything between now and when polls close on Tuesday, it would be polling in Wisconsin.
Well, I'm glad you
That's,
said that because I did actually make a note after last week's show where we
yeah.
spoke about this, and we did say, because I think it was Mr. Brown produced the timings guide as
Oh, it
well
is.
for us,
Yes,
and I
I
think,
like
and
that.
so I remember what you were saying, which was, yeah, yeah. I remember they were the three states you said were likely to be the ones, but obviously now you've done some bit more research on it, so
Yeah.
because they basically are, they're going to be the kingmaker states, and we only need one of them to vote for Trump. I believe it was Wisconsin that released. Well, usually will come out earlier, so
Yes.
that could be, it could be an early
Yes.
night.
It could be. It could be. And if over these next few days, there's fresh polling for Wisconsin. Yes, absolutely keep an eye, but again, context, because some polls are done by partisan institutions in America, people who
Ah,
lean one way or the
yeah,
other.
yeah.
So it's not, yeah,
So
it's not
basically,
necessarily.
it's like almost like akin to kind of like putting it into layman's terms or heavy drinking terms. It's basically going into a pub and asking who likes beer.
Yeah, I suppose that's
Yeah,
right.
do you know what
Yeah,
I mean? It's like,
yeah, it's a
oh, I
fair
wonder
point.
which way this poll's gonna go.
Yeah, yeah, it is a bit like it is like that. I mean, I have to say, 538 do show that rank the pollsters and they show if they've got a bias. So just that's probably the best place um, to go to look for things. But I mean, it is just going to be. I mean, you're going to see utter nonsense from everybody in the next few days, from both campaigns probably. So I mean, let's not forget that the Democrats are going to be all just like unable to contemplate the
So
idea that Trump's back.
here's a question for you from
Yeah.
my dear friend Jamie, who was also one of the PIQ team. Um, he's got a
Ooh.
question for you. So in reality, let's say for instance it is a hung jury, so to speak. Um, how long How long do you think it would take for kind of like an official result to come through? Like, what is the work? Because obviously markets
Mm.
hate uncertainty, right? And say
Yeah.
if things were very very close, um, like ridiculously close, could we potentially see weeks of kind of uh, you know backwards and forwards with lawyers getting involved, like we've seen in previous elections, like way back when, and the whole thing. It always used to be like send the lawyers to Florida kind of thing. Used to be the
Yeah.
whole
Well,
thing. Remember?
of course. Yeah. The hanging chads. If anyone remembers that from 2000, you might want to
Yeah, yeah.
Wikipedia up the 2000 Bush Gore election, where it went to obviously the Supreme Court in the end.
That was the one I was thinking of.
Yeah, it's the one, and it came down. Sorry, hanging chads, meaning it came down
I was going to
to.
say, can you explain that one
Yeah,
for me,
it came
please?
down. That's yeah. Sorry, so it came down to get your mind out of the gutter, Ryan. It came
Sorry,
down to.
sorry.
I knew you were going. You're going somewhere
Oh
with that, and
no, am
I'm
I
not.
that
And I'm
predictable?
worried. And I'm worried. Um, so it came down to recounts, ballots, what constituted a valid ballot, and the way that people voted back then in certain counties in Florida was it was like a hole punch on a piece of paper. So they would hole punch the candidate that
Oh
they
god.
voted for. But what happened was, sometimes when you punch a hole, this is maybe I hope people are do remember using hole punches in paper. It used to be that the little circle that you punched out of the paper didn't always fully get separated from
Oh
the
right, yeah, yeah.
paper. So it might just be hanging by a little edge onto the paper. And there was a debate over what constituted
Oh,
a
BA.
valid ballot. No, and that is a hanging chad. That is a hanging
Oh
chad. That
god.
little circle
Yeah,
is
yeah. When you have to
chad.
like you actually have to pick it out yourself, kind of thing.
Correct. Yeah.
Oh
And
my
hanging
days.
on it. So yeah. So for everybody who thinks that like, oh, we haven't had this before, we have had this before. I mean, that went on for weeks. It was like mid-December, I think, by the time the Supreme Court
So,
ruled.
so I know. So, but using that as like a precedent, then I obviously, hopefully, we've moved on from there. But kind of technically, if we did get it, if the results were really, really tight,
Mm.
we could be looking for like a good 3 4 weeks
Few weeks. Yeah.
potentially based on that. Like, hopefully, things are a lot more efficient now, but there is that potential. And
There is.
I guess there is potential as well that should. I know it seems to be unlikely given what we're seeing with momentum in polls and betting markets and all the research people like your good selves are doing. I know it seems unlikely now that Kamala Harris will
Mm.
win. I think what Trump's traded 1.57 on Betfair, which is
Whoa.
approximately 64%
Wow.
probability, implied probability. But say for instance, there was a surprise, there was a shock. I guess one of the other concerns is that how well do the Republicans take this, and how does Trump respond? So I guess could we potentially, just trying to game every scenario out. I'm not saying for it. I'm not saying that it will happen, but I think
Mm.
if you're involved in markets, you do have to think about these things. So if it was tight, or if Kamala did win fractionally, I think we
Mm.
could potentially, in my opinion at least, and whatever that's worth, I think we could see some significant risk off purely because until
Mm.
it's all kind of laid to rest. I think there's
Yeah.
just too much uncertainty, and the thing is, well, you got to factor in that. The S&Ps are up 25% or whatever on the year.
Amazing. Yeah.
So you know what? If you have got money in the system and it looks a bit kind of the results aren't exactly clear cut, what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to take my money off the table and wait for the dust to settle and come back in the new year. So there could be a lot of money, you know, thinking, hang on a second, do we really need to be in the market for the final month of the year? Potentially not,
Mm.
or 2 months. So anyway,
Well,
it's
no,
it's
I
a,
think I think I'm actually, when you put it starkly like that, like a 64% chance, that feels possibly now a bit high.
yeah, it does.
64%. So it's still only two names. Well, basically two names on the ballot. That's like for the yeah. This isn't Reagan,
Yeah.
Reagan's re-election year. Do you know what I mean? This is not like a
Well,
slam
and
dunk for Trump.
this is it. Like
He's
the
got the
odds.
advantage, but he's not a slam
Obviously,
dunk.
the issue that we do have with the odds, because obviously the US bet markets are now regulated. The US event betting markets are now regulated, so that's why Kalshi and Polymarket are now you're now able to gamble on those in America. So we have seen significant volumes coming into those markets. Now, yes, there's
Mm.
arguments about, oh, it's crypto, it's a bit of money laundering and stuff, but it doesn't matter. It's still moving the
Yeah.
price.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and there are plenty of people out there that will be arbing the Betfair
Yeah.
price to the
Yeah.
Poly market to the Cowsey. So there is a chance that there's so X number of percentage points in this price in Betfair that's simply a result of arbitrage to the US
Yeah.
markets. Because like we get with all these things, if you get a cult on one side, they're
Mm.
throwing money at it regardless.
Yeah.
So perhaps now the value trade is laying Trump. I don't know if I would do it, but it's
Well,
I
it might.
I
I tell you, you probably get a chance at it if you took it off. Um. On the day before. As in, I don't think. I think. Yeah, you might lay it, not, but not to hold it, if you know what I mean. If
yes,
you wanted
yeah,
to
yeah,
punt
yeah,
around with it.
yeah. No, exactly. I think this is the thing, right? I think that these markets are now so liquid, and they have been pretty much since before Brexit. That they are actually very tradable during the event, during the
Yeah.
night. So that'll be
What's
one to watch.
how much is on Betfair? Because you give us this before.
Ah,
What's the
right.
amount that's been?
Yes.
What's the total amount bet?
So
As
total.
when we started these spaces, I think it was around 55, 60 million
I was
quid.
going to say 60 million, so I'm glad you
There you
said
go.
that. Good memory there. So at the moment, it's 116 million.
So it's
Uh,
almost doubled in
yeah,
that time. Yeah,
and
interesting. Okay.
I reckon it will hit 200 million
Yeah,
before the result
yeah.
because
I think you're fair.
it's always a very steep curve going into as the money comes in. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
and there'll be
be
some
an
people
interest.
who need to do some emotional hedging, I imagine,
Oh,
as well.
absolutely, absolutely. Just quickly on this though. Obviously this try and get us locked in. So should we do a
Yeah.
election special on the Tuesday morning or Tuesday during the day or something?
Yeah. Well, you tell me. Hang on. Let me just see what's happening
Yeah,
on
well,
Tuesday.
you tell me your
Tuesday,
diary.
probably. Yeah. Probably. What about like middle of the day, like
Middle
a
of the day
noon,
works for me.
high noon
High
sort of.
noon. Yeah, let's do it. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll
high
book
high
you in.
noon. Yeah, there we go, everyone. We can get the proper update then.
Booked
Um.
in.
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome. Right. Is there anywhere else we need to talk about?
Oh, well, a couple of things quickly. Keeping an eye. Germany.
Oh yeah.
It's getting more and more likely that government's going to collapse and it'll end up in
Yes.
early elections because, get this, Chancellor Scholz uh, set up a business summit this week. It was on Tuesday. He had a business summit. He did not invite his economy minister or his finance minister to the business summit with corporations. So his finance minister then set up his own summit with small and
Yeah.
medium-sized businesses. This does not smack of a government that is working together or wants to work
No.
together.
Right.
So keep an eye on that.
Also, is it the 16th? The budget.
14th of
14th.
November.
14th.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
that's the one to watch out for with that. Yeah, get
because
in.
then it could then the wheels really could fall off.
Fall off, exactly. And
I've
then,
got the Ian
go
memes
on.
at the ready.
Excellent, excellent. And then we've kind of very vaguely touched on this. It's something actually I should look into more. Canada, where Trudeau is right up against it because he was in trouble anyway, but like the whole his government might collapse as well. But it got a bit of a result where the chap in charge, whose name I always forget, Jagjit Singh, I think it is, in charge of the New Democrats Party, said, I'm not going to bring down this government by joining in with the Conservatives to try and bring it down. I'm not going to play games. So Trudeau is safe for now, but
For
it's
now being
still
the operative words.
very wobbly in Canada as well. So there we go.
There we go. Well, that was awesome. And I'm very much looking forward to Tuesday's show. And perhaps we should still do the Thursday show as well, because I think we'll need to do
Yeah,
a recap of the election.
I think we will. Yeah, yeah, we will.
Epic. Double dose of Helen on next week. Oh, it doesn't
Okay,
get any better than that.
I hope
Well,
so.
look, thank you so much as
Realistically.
always. You are absolutely amazing as per usual. I'm just here to be the comedy foil and try not to embarrass myself. Listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully, we'll see you Tuesday for the proper preview of the election. Yeah, and have a great week. And if you are trading, keep it tight.
Take care, everyone. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye bye.